great advocates. You're interacting with your federal and state legislators. But of course, on our last listening session, many of you indicated that you would like to be able to have conversations with your members of Congress and also other legislators. And I know that my team sent along to you some of the talking points that we used for our Hill Day back in May. Some of you participated in that Hill Day, but we wanted to bring our colleagues together to provide you with some additional tools. So today I'm joined by my colleagues, Omasa Richardson. He is Government Relations Coordinator for AACI, and John Easton, who's partner with EFB Advocacy, and he works closely with AACI on our advocacy efforts. So I'm really delighted that both Omasa and John are here today to provide you with two brief presentations, and then of course we will open it up for questions for you all to ask today. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Omasa.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Jen. So I'm just going to be giving you guys a brief 101 on advocacy with your members of Congress. So we have our slideshow here. One moment. Great. So your voice is really the important part of advocacy work. When it comes to meeting with your members of Congress, we're trying to build relationships. Often members of Congress are meeting with many different stakeholders at any given time during the year. So being able to build a personal relationship and for the Congress members to be able to attach your story, your face, with the messaging is incredibly important. The stories really help show the real world impacts of policy decisions. This is why when you are meeting with members of Congress, we really like to hammer home that personal anecdotes are really the key in these meetings. Statistics and numbers are very important as well, but really it's going to be the stories that are going to stick with these members of Congress after you leave their office. So we encourage you to utilize these talking points to help strengthen your asks when you're meeting with members of Congress, whether you're a patient or advocating on behalf of patients. Make sure to discuss the care that you or the patients have received, or their participants in clinical trials, or how clinical trial pauses or things like that could affect them. Or if you're a researcher, care provider, or other sort of cancer professional, explaining both the barriers that impact your ability to provide care, but then also the successes in your cancer research are the key points that you should make when you're meeting with members of Congress. Next slide, please. So when it comes to advocating for funding, these are the values that we've agreed upon as a cancer community. These numbers came to through AACI, Cancer Center Leadership, researchers, patients, and other like-minded organizations to help if we were to continue the momentum that we have in terms of biomedical research in the United States. So for the NIH, we're advocating for $51.3 billion for fiscal year 2026. This is a $4.2 billion increase from FY25. And then for the NCI, we're advocating for $7.934 billion, a $710 million increase from FY 2025. Next slide, please. In collaboration with our organization, American Association for Cancer Research, we recently held our annual Hill Day. The principles that I've kind of explained so far throughout this presentation, even for such a large event like our Hill Day, which had over 160 participants from over 34 states meeting on the Hill, the principles still hold true. It's really about staying on message and working together as a community to really drive home the messaging on why these things are important. Next slide, please. 704. So we're encouraging you during the summer to try and meet with your members in your district or their state. The summer is a great time because there's a recess for both chambers in both the House and the Senate. We have the days in which the House and Senate are both going to be available for meetings. You can meet in their district office, or you can look to invite them for a town hall or a tour of your cancer center. AACI will be looking to provide a template email that you guys can use to help build these connections with these offices to try and organize these meetings. Next slide, please. So if you've never met with a member of Congress, these are kind of just some tips to help make these meetings go more smoothly. Reiterating from what I've said before, stories really are the biggest thing. Um, Even if you feel that you're not as confident with remembering the values and the exact funding numbers and things like that, really, as long as the members or the staffers hear your stories, that's really what's going to be the difference maker here. You should look to explain how community efforts have been instrumental in increasing prevention of cancer, and then also screening, and then also how the current funding environment, be it budget cuts or layoffs or things of that nature, are impacting your patients and providers with cancer. Next slide, please. So following the meeting, you always want to make sure to thank the staffer or the member for meeting with them. They have incredibly busy schedules, so finding time to meet with you is always something that you should be very appreciative of. Offer to be a resource for those offices. They can't be experts on every single issue, so your expertise in these areas not only is incredibly helpful for helping guide their policy making, but also for building those relationships. You can look to take a picture with the staff member or if the member of Congress as a thank you. It also just kind of helps build that rapport. They're attaching names to faces again. Um, you also want to follow up periodically with these offices, either be it for more meetings or with just important informations that are happening with your center, or be it research or any sort of issues that come up, just to continue to build that rapport with the offices. Next slide, please. Finally, just some last minute tips for when meeting with congressional offices. Um, Legislators and staff's schedules can change quite quickly, so you should try and be flexible if one of these things happen, be it your meeting is later or a meeting is earlier. This is just something that can happen occasionally. And also stay on message. The strength of working together as a coalition and working together as a cancer community is coming together with one unified message. So focus on your talking points and use your experience as the backing for those talking points. It's not wise to use things like slides or lengthy monologues, just because a lot of these times these meetings are more ad hoc, and making sure that they know your story is really the key point there. Okay, so that was my presentation on just kind of some things to remember when meeting with your members of Congress during the summer recess. I'm going to kick it off to John then to kind of reiterate on those points and to also answer some questions.
Great. Well, thanks, Masa. It's really great to be here again. I've met a number of you. I've been on these formats with you several times. And it's just good to be back. I love this forum and this group, this community, because you just have some real power in this community, and I love working with Jen and Jaren and Amasa and the whole team. But I think that would be wise, because Amasa's points are all excellent and right on the money in terms of either what you can expect in these offices and sort of some guidelines. I was a chief of staff to 2 U.S. senators, so I've been lobbied heavily in my time. And I also ran one of those senators' re-election campaigns for numerous cycles. So I'm going to blend these two a little bit, experiences, because I think they can be helpful to provide a perspective for just getting the most value out of these meetings. They're not just meetings; these are opportunities, and they are super valuable. And I think that you're in a unique situation where you can bring the local to them, whether it's in the district or the state or it's in Washington D.C. I say sometimes Washington D.C., if you're able to make that trip, it can be even more potent, because those are the staff that are typically writing, helping to write bills, sign on to letters, lobby the leadership of their party on various issues, or committee chairs on these issues. So a couple of macro thoughts that I had for you all. I think that one is that this actually can be really fun, and it also, I think, is a privilege to petition your government. I know several of you have done this before, so I don't want to run over old ground, but I think that these can be good reminders too. But because you are from the state, you are a priority for the member and for their staff. And typically, I wouldn't say this for every staff member on Capitol Hill, but they do want to hear from you and they do want to learn from you. And part of that is because, and this is sort of like when you think of Washington, D.C., you probably think, what is it with this place? I mean, and that's a very good question. It's a very strange, swampy place. But I think that just remind yourself that they are human. The members are human and the staff are human. And what does that mean in this context? It means that they get motivated by certain things because they are, again, they're human. They are political. They want to win. And I think that thinking through what that means in your relationship to the member and to the staff is super important. So it's always wise to think through what impression is that you want to leave them. What do you want to leave them with, and ensure that everything you do, whether it's a handout, or leave behind, or whether it's your own comments, everything contributes to that impression. And then, of course, just a rule of thumb, just got to be concise, and you have to leave time for questions. If you soak up the whole time, the allotted time, and all of a sudden 15 minutes have gone by, and they haven't said a word, well, now you're not learning from them. If there's time for questions back and forth, you have questions for them, they have questions for you, that is actually a more productive meeting. So keep your more formal piece to about maybe 5-7 minutes, and because I think you can get a lot in there. Okay, before the meeting, this is long before the meeting, I would say, even before you've left the state, find a way to figure out how can you thank the staff ahead of time. I mean, just, when you sit down, thanks so much for your time. And by the way, I just want to thank either, I don't know if it's the member, then, thank you for your help on X issue, or thank the staff, say thank you to your bosses. Great work on fill in the blank. Even if it's tangential to your specific issue, you have found something that you can be very supportive of, and you communicate that to them. You're starting to sort of build that bridge. You're starting to build that relationship with them. That is really important. And so part of doing this is spending a few minutes, before your meetings, spend a few minutes researching their efforts, the office's efforts, their priorities, figuring out ways that you can connect directly with them. This probably is going to be in the first 30 seconds of the meeting. Oh, by the way, I saw that Senator so-and-so, in a release or in an article or whatever said this, and that was so helpful to our community. Right there, you're telling them that you are tuned in, that you care about them. And because I think that a lot of times what is missed in this sort of relationship between the governing body and the governed is that a lot of times those who come into lobby don't figure out a way to support them. This might sound a little odd or maybe a little surprising, but because a lot of times people will think right away with that sense, it's like, well, I'm not giving campaign contributions or something like that. That's not at all what that means. Now, of course, if you do that, that's fantastic, but that's not what this is about. There are a lot of ways that you can support a congressional office, and particularly the member himself or herself. And that way is typically on the ground, back home. It could be, as Amasa said about maybe, a tour, but it can go beyond. A tour is just sort of like, I think they get offered tours a lot. Maybe it's it could be a press conference, or it could be some media event, or, maybe they are the keynote speaker of, some annual thing that you are having. And it's that, to them, they will feel like that's a big deal. It can be a media event, or it can be a private event. It's up to them. But figuring out ways that they will feel like, wow, that was really helpful to them, And so if a lot of times what will happen is staff, and I've seen this, I have been there myself when I was a staff member. I remember thinking as they walked away, it's like, they don't even care about my boss at all. All they cared about was getting what they want. That is not how life works. That's not how it works off the hill or on the hill. So I think that needs to be thought through very carefully. And the more you can find a way to support them in some way, even if it's a small way, the further down the road you will get with a true relationship of trust and of support. Also, I would say that, to make sure that they perceive you as pretty sophisticated in this whole macro political thing is express your understanding that some changes are likely to be made. In this particular instance, we know that NIH is undergoing some reform, some changes. When I was doing some meetings with Dr. Nguyen and with Jen and Jaren, we were careful to say, hey, we understand, what you're trying to do. There are efficiencies that can be made. We understand that. We want to be helpful with that. I think for them to hear that, okay, yes, we understand this is a give and take. But then it's your job, of course, at the same time to say, but look, we have to make sure we don't upend areas that are absolute success stories, like the NCI community, which I don't think there's really any debate in that. So again, it's just a little bit, we understand this. However, so there, you can get into a little bit of a two-way street there. And then you figure out a way to separate yourselves from the countless meetings that the staff and the member have. That's just the way it is. They do. But I think that what you have on your side, you've got stories, you've got human interest. The work you do is so important and life-saving that with the right connection and touch, you're able to communicate that, and it's just really compelling. And I think to Amasa's point, you got to tell it. And then I'll just end with this. On that point, I have a client. I work with 9/11 victims' families. Last year, when he was Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, some of the families had a meeting with him, and obviously they have incredibly emotional stories and tragedies to relay. And within 10, 15 minutes, the whole room was in tears, including the majority leader. So, it is important that gets connected and that gets communicated. And I would also, though, as a caveat to that, just make sure that your stories, if you are going to tell a story, make sure that it is concise, because again, you could end up telling you a 15-minute story and that meeting's over. So just be careful there. And then I'll end with, we did a meeting with Jen and Dr. Nguyen and Dr. Hannah Hazard Jenkins with West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito, who happens to be the chair of the appropriations subcommittee that matters the most. And who Senator Capito cared about the most in that meeting was Dr. Hannah Hazard Jenkins. It was basically between those two. That is what they care about. They care about you. They care about what you are doing, because they know, you're a constituent. You matter to them, and especially in your role. So I will just end that there, and I can always answer any questions about if you want to know what's going on Capitol Hill right now. There's not a ton to update, but I can do a quick 1 minute on that, Jen, if you think that's helpful, or if that's expected, but happy to do that.
I think that would be helpful, maybe, John. I just wanted to, reiterate something that you said. I think that the point you made about, that we care about them and we support them. Of course, there are members of Congress who are not supporting what we want them to support, and there are areas where there is, pushback at times. But you're absolutely right, John, that when we go into those meetings, we do need to thank them for something. I think there's always a way also that we can relate to them or relate to the staff member. And so, of course, so many of you in this meeting right now either being cancer survivors or caregivers or patients currently in treatment, telling that story. And if you feel like maybe that person isn't really listening, sometimes it's okay to say, have you ever been impacted by cancer? Because I think we all have. And that always kind of puts that human element in it, which John also mentioned, because they are human too. And so, as John said, they are meeting with hundreds of people every week. And so to be able to remember every story, as he said, I think, before you do have that meeting, it is important to think about what impression you want to leave. And as Omasa said, and John reiterated, even if you don't remember the dollar amounts, that we're requesting, we can certainly provide you with a leave behind. I think just being able to tell that story and how cancer research has benefited you or is benefiting patients is very impactful. So thank you, John, for bringing that up. I think sometimes we always think our members of Congress are working for us, and they are, but it is important that we do thank them when they have done good for us. So I see we have 2 questions. So I don't know, do we want to just, you give like a 1-minute update and then we go to our guests?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I'll keep this quick. I mean, because there's not a ton new on this. There is, everything right now is focused on this big, beautiful bill, reconciliation, as they call it. And really not much is getting done, certainly on the Senate side on appropriations, what we care about the very most, until that is wrapped up. They can't even start, Senator Collins, the chair of the Appropriations Committee, and her colleague, Senator Murray, the ranking member, the lead Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, they're trying to come together on a deal for funding, for a top-line funding for all the appropriations bills. So I think we're pretty certain that the Senate side number for NIH is going to be better, a little bit more robust than the House side. The House side is going to hew a little closer to the president's proposal, which was, we all know, is a cut, a severe cut. And, again, I don't know, do some, like defense certainly makes out okay. We have been told by Senator Cole's, or Chairman Cole's office of the House Appropriations Committee that, it shouldn't be too bad for NIH. We just don't, we can't confirm that. We have no idea until we see the number. And we're not going to actually see the bill being marked up until the end of July, the week of the 21st of July. So that is kind of where that sits. The House is ahead of the Senate in terms of actually writing legislation. But the problem is, this has been the problem of the last 2 Congresses, is the House and the Senate don't have an agreed upon number. And so they're essentially, both chambers are going their own way with a different, and then they're going to have to come back and figure out a way to negotiate that number with one final conference report, as they call it, one final bill that they've both agreed on. A lot of work to do, and it's going to go on through this year. They're going to do in the fall, as they always do, by September 30th. They're going to have a patch to get us through till mid-December, and then we get up to New Year's Eve. And it really is going to go the same way. But so there's good and bad there. I think there is some urgency in your advocacy in that we do want to get in now while they're still writing subcommittee bills that will go to the floor and get passed, or we think they are. We don't know if they actually will make it to the floor. But it is important to get our stuff in and get our advocacy in as they're writing bills. But that is certainly not the last bite of the apple. It is going to go on for months as we keep kicking the can, as we always do, keep kicking the can down the road. There is still opportunities to, fix a number that's bad, to make sure that if the Senate number is better, which it's almost certain that it will be, that will be the number for NIH, not the House number. Those are all things that we're going to be able to help influence throughout the year. So I think that's, Jen, unless there's anything else you want me to cover.
No, that's very helpful, John. Maybe we'll stop here. We have 2 questions, and we can start with Dr. Cooper.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted not necessarily question, but my comments and experience that I will share. I have had the privilege for the last 3-4 years with the American Society of Clinical Oncology action work and have been to DC at least 3, if not 4 times. And every time we were giving a calendar, and on my calendar, my first time I was excited I will meet the senator, congressman, and all that, that 3 times in a row. It was never the senator or the congressman. So my last visit was in April. I met Senator Pete Ricketts, legislative correspondent. I met Congressman Dan Bacon's legislative director, and I have their cards. Then I met Senator Fisher's legislative assistant. All 3 years it has been these people, and I got their cards, and I not only explained what we were fighting for, but I emailed them because their cards have the emails. But to be honest, I don't know how much impact I was able to make, not necessarily me, but we were 4 people representing oncology community, and our asks, they call them asks, included funding for research and the chemotherapy drug shortage and the prior authorization. So I am not sure how much is done, but I can share with you my kind of disappointment about the prior authorization bill, which was seniors' timely access to care. But when I think about it, and as Mr. Easton was saying, they are not expert in everything. We have to educate them. And I was so disappointed that they were missing the whole point with seniors' timely access to care was just increasing turnaround time and making electronic submissions and the gold card or stuff. This is not what we need for prior authorization. What we need is cancer care is based on the widespread established guidelines, NCCN guidelines. If anything done in that guidelines, they should be exempt from prior authorizations. We don't need Band-Aid measures like increased turnaround time. It's a joke to me. But how much time and resources spent on that seniors' timely access yet remains to be seen. It will ever pass. And I'm afraid the same thing is with research funding. All we are pushing here and taking time visiting with them, and all we cannot pass beyond their legislative assistance. And I'm hoping, wishfully thinking that it makes a difference. But to be honest, after 3 years, I am not saying it's not happening, but I'm just curious how much impact we are making. And I appreciate all this opportunity to share with you. And the next big issue is funding for research, but also regulatory burden in clinical trials, which is a huge, huge barrier to the United States research, because by the time our cooperative groups, NCI and CORP, come up with a clinical trial, pass it, and put it in action and get it done and then published, Europeans and Chinese Oncology Society, boom, 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 they publish it before even we barely make it. And the last ASCO meeting, there was the adjuvant colon trial. It took 7-8 years to have a preliminary data, which even it is not published in. And it's a huge difference, something, and industry kind of trying to compensate that delay, but I cannot say it any more highly that regulatory burden and government type work in clinical research is killing American science, and we are falling behind Europe and China. And I will stop, and I will be hopeful for future. And again, very thankful for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cooper. John, the comment on, the unfortunate circumstance when sometimes a member cannot be in the meeting. Sometimes we know in advance that the member is not going to be able to be there. But as both Amasa and John mentioned, that these schedules do change at a moment's notice. There there are times where you're in a meeting and there's a vote and they only have a certain amount of time to get to that vote. So that can be challenging. If there's a committee hearing, they're expected to be there. And so that also presents challenges. So when a meeting is confirmed, maybe a month in advance or a couple of weeks in advance, they are probably planning to be in that meeting. It's just sometimes, unfortunately, they're taken away for other reasons. And obviously, with all of the chaos that's been happening over the last couple of months, understandably, members of Congress have been pulled away more often than not. I would, John maybe could speak a little bit more to this. I wouldn't get too discouraged, Dr. Coker, meeting with the LC and the LD. Maybe when you're in the moment and it doesn't feel like they are digesting everything you're saying, they might have a hearing to get to that they've got to give their boss talking points for, and they've got other things happening. But I do think that when they go back to their desk later on in the day, they are probably reading through everything that you're giving. I don't think it's not worth your time. I think you should continue those efforts, continue that outreach. LCs can become the chief of staff someday, and staff members have become members of Congress. So I really think that continuing that outreach is really important. But I'll let John weigh in if he has anything else to say on that.
Yeah, and I agree. And the only thing I would add to that is that these meetings can't be treated as one-offs. Like, this is the shot, and that's it. They should be part of a succession of things that you do. You all are extremely busy. There is no doubt in my mind you don't have a lot of time for, to be having this contact, that contact, this within your schedules. However, just that, like, when I'd be back in the States, sometimes I'd be with the senator, and he'd be I'd work for both, in a conversation. And they would turn to me, somebody just like you. He would turn to me and say, "Hey, John, can you make sure that we sort of get on this issue?" I can't tell you how many times that happened, but that was because that person was at some reception, and it could have been a gala, it could have been anything, not necessarily a fundraising reception. I'm not even saying that, but somewhere. So getting out there, and if you say, okay, gosh, Senator Fisher, Senator Ricketts is going to be at this thing, I'll just see if I can maybe just have a 30-second conversation with him or her. It matters. And then the next time you're in DC or you're in the district, you say, hey, I ran into your boss, it was great, and we talked about this. Or even better, somebody like me communicates right back to the legislative director and say, hey, the senator wants to do something about this, all because you grabbed 15 seconds with the senator at an event at home. So again, there are lots of ways to make sure you're getting your voice heard in the process. But if it's just a one-off thing once a year, or maybe once every other year, then you may be more discouraged than you could otherwise be. But to Jen's point, try not to be discouraged. You have to make the best of your time and make the best case you can, and then do it again in the next opportunity you have.
Yeah, and I will say, if send that thank you email when you're done, and continue to build that relationship. Send an email when you're upset. If you see that the president's proposed budget is proposing nearly 40% cut to the NIH, then send them a note and express your concern. And regarding the prior authorization bill, Dr. Coper, I will just say that if that was on our Hill Day, when we do our Hill Day, we do tell the offices that our primary point of the Hill Day is to talk about the NIH and NCI funding. So there just may not have been a subject matter expert in that particular meeting. So again, don't get discouraged if you bring something up and they just didn't seem to understand or care. I do think that folks do go back to their desks and sort of digest what they've heard and maybe confer with their colleagues. We do have a question in the chat for John, but I would like Jesse to be able to ask his question first. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse Nador. I'm associate professor in School of Medicine at UC San Diego, and I'm the associate director for community outreach and engagement at Moores Cancer Center. Hopefully, the question I'm asking is relevant to many of us, and it's for both John and Omasan. We have plenty of pissed off people that are looking for action, and that's reflected in the 60, 80,000 people that marched on Saturday on the No Kings thing here in San Diego and so on. But, um, you know, it's just like one attack after another. And one of the things that a lot of us are quite leery of at this point is the politics. What you're describing, John, is the old, because I've been to the Hill with the American Cancer Society under the Cancer Action Network. And, what you describe is kind of like same old, same old. You go in and you appease your member and blah, blah, blah. Well, I think a lot of us are beyond that, and we're looking to get organized, quite frankly, in a sustained effort. And so one of my main question is, we're not interested in preaching to the choir. The folks, particularly from blue states like ours that are in our side, are not really who I think we should be talking to. So my question is, should we and how do we focus on Democrat or admin, the current administration supporters?
Yeah, Amasai has something to add to this, but right now, obviously, I don't need to tell you all, it is a one-party dominant Washington, D.C. at the moment. Although it is, the House and the Senate could not be, well, it could be slightly closer, but barely. I mean, they are razor thin. So in order to get something through the Senate, other than the reconciliation bill, which has very limited things it can contain, there has to be compromise. And with biomedical research, and I should say like cancer research and treatment, but also Alzheimer's as well, this has been such a bipartisan priority for years now. And with Republicans, this particularly on healthcare, on the appropriations committees in the House and the Senate, this was an area where they were more than happy to fund and keep increasing every year until we got into this situation right now, which is into a major austerity era that we're in at the moment. So yes, I think I'm involved with a number of efforts where we are honing in on the red areas, the more rural states, and because a lot of them sit on the appropriations committee, a lot of their votes are needed just as much as the blue votes, obviously. And with people like Chairman Cole of Oklahoma, I mean, he's been there all the way. He is a big time champion and we're lucky he's there because I think he's having a positive effect on a lot of members. But we have materials going into red states and their members very localized, as localized as we can get anyway, just discussing how NIH research benefits their states, not only with healthcare, but with the economy. So you are exactly right. And I think that I applaud you for thinking along those lines. That's very smart, sophisticated, and that is what is needed right now. We know the Democrats are there. They want to spend more money on NIH research. And I think we just have to make sure that Republicans continue to see this as a national priority, like defense. I have long thought that NIH research is up there and should be up there for forever, really. But I think just giving these offices, these members, the tools to say, this is why I support an increased funding in NIH research in Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Maine, wherever. That is the name of the game. And I think you have a lot of people doing it. ACS CAN is doing a really good job with that. I think, AACI certainly is doing a great job, United for Medical Research. So a lot of groups are doing that, focusing in on those states, and we need as much help as we can get with that. So appreciate your comment and question.
One little follow-up. How much traction can you get through shaming?
Through shaming?
Or is that really, should that be off? That's not the way to go, particularly with, purple, red elected folks.
Yeah, That's a high risk strategy, and I would advise against it.
Yeah, so one thing that I think has been very successful, Jesse, and a lot of our cancer center directors and many of you are doing is having one-on-one conversations with some of these members of Congress. You know, John already highlighted Dr. Hazard Jenkins' interaction with Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. You know, Chairman Tom Cole is very supportive of NIH funding. And so continuing to have those conversations with those Republican members is critical right now. And I think those one-on-one conversations are meaningful. And as Omasa shared, there are some in-district state work periods where we encourage you to definitely try to, go see them. There's 4th of July parades. There's lots of opportunities back home coming up where you likely will see your members of Congress. John made the recommendation that maybe you consider hosting a town hall with your cab where you can invite all of your members of Congress. Some of them might not show up, but just giving them the opportunity to come and talk with you I think is very helpful. But thank you, Jesse. That is something that we are focused on. And our colleagues at AACR are also focused on this as well. They are working on a rally on the road effort, and they are targeting some of the states that we've just talked about: West Virginia, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and why do I always blank on that last one? I'll get back to you.
But I would just add again to you, the ability, you on the ground, looking for opportunities to have some sort of dialogue or relationship with the member. Obviously, that's the best, but with staffer, and you can make it a goal. Look, I'm going to have one contact in the DC office that I know I can reach, and I have one contact in the district or state office that I know I can reach, and then. Occasionally, I just said it after the subcommittee hearing with Dr. Bhattacharya, the NIH director, last week, I think it was. I didn't expect it, but Senator Schatz of Hawaii was fantastic. And he just hasn't been one that has been really into the NIH issues and funding. And his questions were so smart and they were so well done. I emailed his health advisor. I just said just that. I said, by the way, I just want to let you know, great job on that. And she emailed me right back. She said, thank you so much. We spent a lot of time on that. So I wasn't asking for anything. I just thanked them that it was a great job. And they love to hear that. So a lot of times, if you're just reaching out to say, hey, I saw your boss do this. That was really, really great. Or thank you for this. Brigitte, it's just a touch point, and it's maybe 2 sentences, and that's it. Maybe they respond to you, maybe they don't, but that means a lot. And that, again, that's just sort of building that relationship. It takes time. As Amasa said, it takes time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jesse. I'll just read this question from the chat for you, John. A participant noted that they had a meeting with the majority whip, who was a physician and had a wife die of cancer, and their story was dismissed. John, do you have any advice for when a constituent feels they're not truly being heard? And I will say we did have something like this happen at our Hill Day as well. So I am interested to hear what you think.
Wow, that's a tough one because, sometimes it's just a bad meeting, and there's just not a lot you can do it. And if, you just got to maybe find another way with that office. And then sometimes there's just, if it's your own member of Congress, I would say you're going to have to keep trying in other ways. But if there are times when if it's just it's a member leadership, it's not your member. Sometimes I've just cut them loose and just like, that's not worth my time and my energy because they're just not listening and they're not interested. There are times that's your calculus and you got to make it. That can be a hard calculus, but that's it. That experience, I'm very sorry for that. That I think is a real rarity. I know it happens from time to time, but usually they're very caring staff members and caring members of Congress. So that's just that is not fun, and I'm sorry that happened and I just hope that doesn't discourage you with other members of Congress and staff.
Thanks, John. Omasa, would you like to read what you wrote in the chat, just because if anyone's on the phone or
Yeah.
can't see it? Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, but just echoing what Jen and John said, especially when you're reading with these members from rural districts, it can be important for these meetings to kind of reiterate on how NIH and NCI funding affects those areas. Often the benefits from continued investment in the NCI and NIH are often underappreciated in these areas, especially where cancer disparities are higher. So these meetings serve to show the progress that has been being made, and like, why we need to continue the research, but then also what's at risk for being lost. Because if we were to start underfunding the NCI and NIH, these areas with already disparities affecting them would just be impacted even further.
Oh yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. In fact, I can just give you an example. Chairwoman Shelley Moore Capito, senator who leads the Labor HHS subcommittee in the Senate Appropriations Committee, got into a back and forth with Dr. Bhattacharya of NIH on NCI or emerging designated centers and how important that was to her. Why? I think she did that because she had heard so much about it, and she knows, she's been to West Virginia University. She knows, I mean, 100 times, I'm sure, and knows how important it is. And a lot of that is due to people like you who are in her ear and her staff's ear saying, like what almost I was saying about just the impact of it, particularly in rural areas, which is most of West Virginia. But I mean, that is so important. That is like the most important thing that you can be doing is relaying those kinds of experiences in rural areas, for sure.
Thank you, Amasa. Thanks, John. Brian shared in the chat an op-ed that was authored by a high schooler in Kansas, and I think it's great. I just wanted to note that AACI is also here as a resource. If any of you are interested in authoring an op-ed, my team is eager to help you. We have some really great writers here at AACI who can certainly edit or help you enhance your op-ed, but we're certainly interested in efforts like this. So please feel free. I put my colleague Emily's email address in the chat if you're interested in authoring one. I think that would be great too, especially if you are in a red state or have Republican members of Congress. Any other questions? Am I missing any in the chat? Any other comments or anything anyone would like to share? I know some of you have had meetings recently with members of Congress. Would anyone like to share any insights or feedback or advice for your colleagues? Brian?
Yeah, I first want to say hi to Jesse. When you were in Arizona, we met briefly, so good to see you again. And I would just say to everyone, don't give up. This process takes a long time. It is hard, and as we heard, some of these conversations are not necessarily pleasant all the time, but it's worth it. And ultimately, we do have, I say this all the time. I had to change my shtick a little bit because it was a little too. We have to respect these people, respect the positions that they're in. They put their names on the line. We saw the unfortunate, horrible potential danger that public officials now face in our country. They put their names on the line. They are judged by us at the election box, but also every day. The reality is we're the experts of our stories. That's what we can bring to them. They are not the experts of our stories, of our lived experience, and that's what we have to bring to them in hopes that it will change or impact the decisions that they're making. So don't give up. If you give up, there's no chance of us winning. And as you've learned in this call, there is a lot of historical experience and support within the Congress for our issue, for research funding. We need to bolster it. We need to continue to explain it, and we need to continue to show the benefits from it. Those come from our stories. So keep it up.
Thank you, Brian. Very well said. I appreciate that. Dr. Cohn? Oh, you're muted, Dr. Cohn.
What Brian said, it was actually such a great summary. I almost didn't want to add to that, but I will add one thing, which is that it gets easier. I think sometimes it feels like we didn't sign up for that part. We wanted to do these other things, teach or research, or not sign up for cancer at all if we could have avoided that. But the fact of the matter is that as the more you do it, the easier it gets. And what felt to me initially very difficult after a rousing town hall, I actually liked my representative a whole lot better. And so I just would, sort of offer that out, because I know that this is not necessarily how we wanted it to go, but it is what we have, and we have a lot that we can do with it.
Thank you, Dr. Cohn. Appreciate that. And I think that you make a great point that, when you have a one-on-one conversation, or maybe if you have that kind of town hall and you're able to have a more conversation sort of maybe on your turf or theirs, maybe you will learn that you like that person a little bit more than you thought you did. Nicholas? Nicholas, you're unmuted, but I cannot hear you. Can we hear him? You want to type it in the chat, maybe? Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone have any other final questions or thoughts to share?
Well, I'll share. Been listening the whole time. I think one of the most powerful parts that I just heard was the shared experiences. That's what makes us unique in our approach across demographics, whether you're in the north, east, south, or west, or you're just in a part of America that thinks differently, believes differently, or a part of a certain party that believes differently. I think our shared experiences connect us. I think our shared testimonies from our shared experiences connect us. And I think when people open their minds, they and hear the shared experience, may not have felt it, but just hear it. And hearing it and valuing it and being able to say, I understand and let's connect, that's what bring about change. It's that understanding. You may can't get it, but if a part of the light bulb connects, then you have gone perhaps half the way that some people are not even willing to go. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Nicholas, do you want to try to talk again? Let's see if it works. No? And I agree, backing up stories with data, especially data related to their districts, is helpful. Any data success stories, clinical trials that you or others have been on, please share all of those stories. They are very, very impactful. Tony, I would recommend questioning Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas regarding the science research, since his background as being an obstetrician. I suggest this because I sat next to him on a flight a couple of years ago, and he was more concerned about the wall than the health and well-being of the children who were separated from family. I wonder if there has been a change. Thank you, Tony.
That is a tough member to crack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel for you if it sounds like Senator Marshall is your senator. I think that anyway, I don't know. But I was going to say this can apply to certainly him, but I think, broadly, I've been a part of setting up a panel discussion in Maine. It was several years ago with, and Senator Collins was the sort of the main event. But we had, I think there was a cancer patient there. There was Jackson Labs, which of course the medical center provides medical supplies, mice, et cetera. And then and then we had the University of Maine as well. And it was just, and it was moderated, and it was just a fantastic discussion about biomedical research. And you could just kind of feel Senator Collins wanting to just say super supportive things. And she got caught up in the moment. She stayed for 90 minutes. I mean, she was all in. And I think sometimes that when you're at home and you have an event like this and you're surrounded by these stories, and they're remarkable stories and discoveries and treatments and cures. I mean, just so many great things that can really pull in a member of Congress and help get them to where you want them to go too. So there's something to think about, and maybe you can think of ways where you could have a format like that. Because I think something to remember too, trust me, this was my filter. I didn't want anything that was hostile, with my senator. I wanted something that would show him supporting this community and that community hopefully supporting him in this discussion. And so maybe you tap into something that's already kind of, has been organized in the past, or maybe you could start something new, but something that would be very appealing to a member of the House or your senator, one of your two senators. Or invite them both. I'm sure they probably both won't go, but because they don't like to share the stage. But those are tactics that a lot of times can really work because they have the stage themselves, and they are hearing directly from some really well-spoken members of the community.
Thank you, John. And I will agree with Brian's comments to Tony to focus on Senator Moran. He's a great champion for biomedical research in general and cancer research in particular. So you've got a great champion in him. So thank you. Omasa and John, thank you both for these presentations today. Thank you to all of our CAB colleagues for joining and providing all of these great insights and asking a lot of great questions. My colleagues, Chloe and Kate, will follow up with you. And if you have any additional questions, John, Omasa, or I will be available. We can certainly answer them for you, but really appreciate your efforts. And we will keep in touch with you about the next gathering that we plan to host. Thank you all. And please be in touch if you have any questions.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.